Okay, 10:23:30. Right. Hold up. I think the speaker is here.
Hare
Are
Krishna,
you here?
Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Acharya Nistha Das Prabhu. Hare Krishna, good morning. Thank you for tuning in.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm sorry. I hope the signal is okay. I apologize.
Yeah, the signal is nice. Thank you very much. You know your verses? 10:23:30. Acharya Nistha Prabhu is a surrendered soul. He made himself available to give class on a short notice. That's a sign of an advanced soul.
Do you usually chant like anything, any prayers, or Jai Radhamadav, or?
Jai Radhamadava is done. You can just do the invocation and move on to the class.
Okay, Prabhu.
We'll keep it simple. And our audience is very, we have an advanced audience here. So make sure you leave 10, 15 minutes for questions before 8. Acharya Nistha, please.
So around 7:50. What time should I?
Yeah. Yep. I'll interrupt you abruptly. Don't worry. And before we begin, Acharya Nistha Prabhu, can you tell us a little bit, just maybe 3-4 sentences, how you came across bhakti, or what you were doing? Okay, because it's your first time.
Sure, Prabhu. Yeah. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be with you this morning. It's a great privilege to be a part of the temple at the Bhakti Center, such a prestigious program. I'm very humbled. I offer all my respects and ask blessings for all the devotees here that I've been asked to try to serve you all. Even though I'm sure many of you are all in a higher position than me. So I got in touch with Krishna consciousness originally in actually Peru. I was a backpacker, I was traveling, I was a seeker doing my own meditations, and I somehow or other came across Prabhupada's books. I met devotees there, and I went into quite a deep spiritual search trying to reconcile different world religions. I was raised Christian, and I wanted to really understand why there's so many different religions, but I knew that the essence was the same. So it was only when I came across Srila Prabhupada's books that became very clear and apparent and explained in all its subtlety and detail. So I first joined the temple in Washington, D.C., in Potomac, Maryland. That's where I grew up. And from there, I traveled, and I've been serving in Chicago. Now I'm also traveling and just trying to share this wisdom in any way that I can. So we'll begin here with Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 23, text number 30. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Krishnantino na pataya pitaro sutava na bratrabandhu shridakuta eva chanye tasmad bhavat prapadayo patitamanamno nanya bhavedga tirarindama tadvedi. Okay, I'll read the translation. And this is, text number 30. Our husbands, fathers, sons, brothers, other relatives, and friends will no longer take us back. And how could anyone else be willing to give us shelter? Therefore, since we have thrown ourselves at your lotus feet and have no other destination, please, O chastiser of enemies, grant our desire. Purport. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments as follows. From their very youth, the Brahmins' wives had heard about Lord Krishna's beauty, qualities, and sweetness from the women folk of Vrindavan village, and also from the flower ladies, the betel nut sellers, and others. Consequently, they always felt ecstatic love for Krishna and were indifferent to their household duties. Their husbands, seeing them as deviant, doubted them and avoided dealing with them as far as possible. Now the wives of the Brahmins were ready to formally reject their so-called families and neighbors, and out of great agitation they were crying, placing their heads upon Lord Krishna's lotus feet, offering obeisances. In this way, with choking voices, they spoke the above verse. They begged that Lord Krishna bestow upon them the benediction that he be their only destination, that he, the chastiser of enemies, subdue all their enemies, those difficulties obstructing them from attaining the Lord. The wives of the Brahmins simply wanted to serve Lord Krishna, and this is pure Krishna consciousness and ecstatic love of Godhead. Om Ajnanatirmirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitang Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadahmayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vansha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindubhya Evacha Patitanan Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Tat Sat. So I'll just read this translation one more time. Our husbands, fathers, sons, brothers, and other relatives and friends will no longer take us back. And how could anyone else be willing to give us shelter? Therefore, since we have thrown ourselves at your lotus feet and have no other destination, please, O chastiser of enemies, grant our desire. So I'll just pull up a few notes here. Okay. And a beautiful statement from the purport here. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is explaining, from their very youth, the Brahmins' wives had heard about Lord Krishna's beauty, qualities, and sweetness from the women folk of Vrindavan village, and also from the flower ladies, the betel nut sellers, and others. Consequently, they always felt ecstatic love for Krishna and were indifferent to their household duties. Okay, so here we're hearing a very critical principle of spiritual life, and this is the power of Krishna Katha. these ladies of Vrindavan, they simply heard these vibrations about the Lord. Simply by that hearing, it awakened their full Krishna consciousness. So this is an extremely important point to take note of. The power of the spiritual vibrations. We know in this world, there's many subjects for hearing and chanting about. That there's a nice verse. Nam santi sahasrasha apashatam atmatatvam griheshu grihamedinam. O King, there's actually very many subjects for hearing and chanting about in this material world. And I notice here in New York, there's a particular, we could say, potency in these topics. Because I'm a visitor, I'm not a local here. But personally, we understand New York is a dham. Srila Prabhupada came here. The pure devotee who carries Krishna in their hearts, wherever they go, they turn that place into a place of pilgrimage. So Srila Prabhupada brought Goloka Vrindavan to New York City. He radically changed this city. And he's provided the opportunity for so many lost conditioned souls, we're all lost in this material world, to become purified. And I see that here, there's particular potency in the topics, because when you're in the dham, everything is more powerful. And so also Maya can act very powerfully. So in the dham, Maya acts to cover the dham. So here we see also there's a covering of this spiritual realm that Srila Prabhupada manifested. And that generally takes place in the form of hearing different things. We can hear the news, we can hear what our friends are up to, the latest gadgets, so many topics, they attract us. We by nature, Ananda Mayobhya said, we're seeking to be attracted. And unless we find the proper object of attraction, then we remain in the cycle of birth and death. By the Lord's grace, after many lifetimes, we come in contact with those who can revive our original Krishna consciousness. How? By vibrating the transcendental sounds of Krishna's pastimes, his qualities, his descriptions. This is what happened in this pastime. These cowherd women, they didn't see Krishna, they didn't get the chance to meet him, but they just heard. They heard these vibrations, the vibrations of the internal energy of Krishna Katha. The pure sound vibration is non-different from Krishna. So he enters the ear first. First we hear about Krishna. And that hearing is so potent, so powerful, that it can radically transform what? Our desires. Hearing will transform our desires. So there's a few wonderful, the Bhagavatam is filled with wonderful verses explaining this phenomenon. I'll just share a few from the third canto. This is chapter 5. The translation, O Lord, persons who, because of their serious attitude, attain the stage of enlightened devotional service, achieve the complete meaning of renunciation and knowledge, and attain the Vaikuntha Loka in the spiritual sky simply by drinking the nectar of your topics. So this is like a rasayana, that means a life-giving elixir. Hearing about Krishna is the life-giving elixir which awakens our soul to our original constitutional position. Further in this canto, there's a nice verse in chapter 9. Oh my Lord, persons who smell the aroma of your lotus feet. So they smell the aroma of your lotus feet carried by the air of Vedic sound through the holes of the ears. accept your devotional service. For them, you are never separated from the lotus of their hearts. So this internal, we could say, form of the internal energy in the form of the sound vibrations, pure sound vibrations of the descriptions of Krishna. This is actually, it says here, it facilitates the scent of the Lord's lotus feet. So throughout the Bhagavatam, what is Srimad Bhagavatam? It's the opportunity to hear that, to get that scent. All right. In the spiritual world, you know, senses can perform many functions. We know that about the Supreme Lord. So to get this scent, even through hearing, because Krishna is absolute. And this principle, we could say, is no more powerfully revealed than by the Lord's greatest devotee, that is Srimati Radharani, in the gopis. So the gopis actually had a very amazing pastime, feeling intense separation from Krishna. Krishna sent Uddhava to go and pacify them. And during that time, the gopis, they explain this principle. They say to hear about the pastimes that Krishna regularly performs is nectar for the ears. For those who relish just a single drop of that nectar, even once, their dedication to material duality is ruined. So just see how they're phrasing this. It seems negative, but it's actually the most positive principle. One's dedication to material duality. Why? Because we don't have that taste. We don't have that higher taste. Param drishta nivartate. Therefore, we're dedicated to this material duality. But the gopis say, if you get even one drop of that nectar, that dedication is ruined. And they say many such persons have suddenly given up their wretched homes and families, and themselves becoming wretched, traveled here to Vrindavan to wander about like birds, begging for their living. So in spiritual life, because we're not these bodies, sometimes it's difficult to appreciate the higher levels of devotional service, which seem quite austere for the body. But it's really just it's like a huge feast for the soul. When the soul is so full, then the need to very carefully maintain, decorate, basically worship the body is subdued. And of course, one of the most famous verses explaining this principle we find in the Gopi Gita. Tava katam ritam tapta jivanam kaviviridrisham kalmasapaham Shravana mangalam Shrimadatata Bhuvi Grinantiye Burita Jana. So who is the best people? Who's the greatest person in the world? The gopis, by their personal example, they're saying those who spread the message of Krishna's pastimes, they're the greatest people. They say the nectar of your words, descriptions of your activities are the life and soul of those suffering in the material world. So we need to make these descriptions our life and soul. If something is your life and soul, how often do you do it? So these narrations transmitted by learned sages eradicate one's sinful reactions and bestow good fortune to whoever hears them. What is this good fortune? The good fortune is that we can revive our divine, eternal, ecstatic reality. This is what is being hinted, this is what's being mentioned in the purport, that the wives of the Brahmins simply wanted to serve Lord Krishna, and this is pure Krishna consciousness and ecstatic love of Godhead. Just by hearing, they developed this, we could say, divine obsession. There's so many material obsessions, there's so many diseases, there's so many material infatuations. But what's the origin? That our soul needs to be infatuated with Krishna, to have this obsessed. Yes, it's a very healthy obsession, and because we don't have that, we suffer. And if we don't think we're suffering, then we may not be in touch with reality, because the real happiness is on a much higher platform than anything we can get in this material world. So by hearing, then what happened? It transforms the desire. We cannot annihilate desire. Spiritual life means we have to transform the desire. We have to awaken, develop a burning, strong desire to want to serve Krishna. We're all here because of desire, but how strong is our desire to serve Radha and Krishna, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? That's something we need to cultivate, and it will be greatly enhanced by the process of hearing. So for our process, Prabhupada is explained, is based on hearing and chanting. We need to dedicate time every day hearing about Krishna's pastimes, ideally every day, as much as possible. Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. This is our, we could say, most important duty. And as this statement mentions, the wives of the Brahmins simply wanted to serve Krishna. So the result of this hearing, a desire, a personal desire awakens, I want to serve Krishna. And that can take whatever shape and form is most attractive to the soul, or whatever intrinsic desire may arise. Srila Prabhupada, I was reading this nice statement in the 4th canto in the section of Dhruva Maharaj, where he says that the word samprasane means being satisfied. A person should act in such a way that the Lord is satisfied by the activity. It is not that he himself is to be satisfied. Outside of Bhakti Yoga, everyone is trying to satisfy himself. No one is trying to satisfy the Lord. So our conditioned ego has us thinking that the goal of my life is to satisfy myself. And even in devotional life, we may tend to fall into this. We may go through our day and our life thinking how I can be satisfied. But here, the principle is actually, one should act in such a way that the Lord is satisfied. This is completely changing our inborn material consciousness, not acting for my own satisfaction in any shape or form, but actually always thinking how the Lord will be satisfied. And this is the principle we're seeing here in the lives of the gopis, who they gave up everything out of their intense desire to serve. In these higher levels of love of Godhead, that desire to serve overwhelms them, and they can't even be separated from the Lord. So they're leaving everything for that service, to be with the Lord. On this point of changing our desire, we can take assistance from anything in this material world. Anything in this material world can be a stimulus for remembering Krishna. Why? Because everything in the material world comes from Krishna. Janmadasya yataha. So this stimulus, this can help remind us actually of Krishna. In Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu in stages of love of God, it's called Udipan. But we can take anything in this world to help us remember Krishna. When we see young children playing, that can remind us of Krishna playing. Young kids in school, it's a beautiful meditation because it's showing us a form, it's a reflected form, but of the absolute reality. We see what's making the world go round. They say it's love. Boy, girl, man, woman, what's the origin of that? So when we see these things in the material world, we should reflect and understand how much more incredible, amazing, ecstatic is the pure form of this. Parents, children, friends, you see friends, very close friends. We have to see what's the origin, what's the pure form of all this phenomenon. That way one can remember Krishna at any time, because one would be conversant with the source. So our task is to transform our desire. We have many desires. That's why we're here. We have desire. And let us see in the core of our heart, what is it that attracts us to the material world? And then let us reflect how that tendency can be properly utilized. For example, I notice, perhaps because of my body, it seems there's a great infatuation sometimes with the lady folk in becoming beautiful. It's a big thing. The hair, the jewelry, the makeup. So one has to correct that tendency. What goes on in the spiritual world? Everyone is dressing Radharani. And they're making the most exquisite, mind-blowing decorations, dresses, the makeup. All of this has its origin when the devotees of Radharani, they decorate her. Now that same principle to decorate, rather than decorating myself or ourself, that pure form is used in decorating the Lord. And how stunning that is. Why? Because all of these decorations are made of love. All the jewels, the different dresses, the earrings, everything is personal in the spiritual world. So the devotees are offering love through this service. This is something actually so much intensely more attractive than the material world, which is based on gratifying our false ego, trying to look better than others. It's the perverted form. We have to outgrow it by getting the higher taste. So on this point of developing the desire, the Srila Prabhupada translated the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu as the nectar of devotion, and it's one of the character of one actually in ecstatic love is eagerness. And Prabhupada writes some very famous statements. I'm sure all of you have heard, but we can repeat these for our own purification. Everything has some value, and one has to pay the value before obtaining or possessing it. It is stated in the Vedic literature that to purchase the most valuable thing, Krishna consciousness, one has to develop intense eagerness for achieving success. This eagerness is nicely expressed by Bilvamangal Thakur in the Krishna Karnamrita. He says, I'm eagerly waiting to see that boy of Vrindavan, whose bodily beauty is captivating the whole universe, whose eyes are always bounded by black eyebrows and expanded like lotus petals, who is always eagerly glancing over his devotees and therefore moving slightly here and there. His eyes are always moist, his lips are colored like copper. And through those lips, there comes a sound vibration which drives one madder than a mad elephant. I want so much to see him at Vrindavan. This is where we need to repose our desire, our eagerness, and actually greed. Greed is an artha in the conditioned state. But the positive use of greed is a great asset in spiritual life. We should be greedy to hear, greedy to chant. Let that greed become so strong that it outweighs anything for this material world. And it's also explained in the same book that this lolya, or excessive eagerness for meeting and serving the Lord in a particular way, that is the price to enter into the kingdom of God. Otherwise, there's no material calculation for the value of the ticket by which one can enter the kingdom of God. So how eager are we in our spiritual life? This is the ticket. It's not a mechanical formula. According to this, it doesn't mean you just chant this many rounds and you go back to Godhead. This says to develop this intense eagerness for meeting and serving the Lord, that is the price to enter the kingdom of God. So that's why the spiritual life should be very dynamic. We have to be on guard against ritualism, religiosity, kind of taking the inner spiritual quest to a mundane or even an institutional formula. We're not into formulas. We're not into creeds and doctrines. It's a very personal journey, discovering and awakening personal desire in our heart. So that's really the life, the spiritual life, we could say, proper. I have some more nice passages here, but Prabhu said maybe we should pause. I don't know if now is a good time.
Now is a good time, Acharya. Prabhu.
Okay,
Thank
Prabhu.
you much. Nice class.
Krishna.
Temple room, Guru Sharan Prabhu, do you have any comments or questions? Maybe corrections? Acharya Nistha Prabhu lives to be corrected. Do you have anything? Guru Sharan, beautiful smile. Adi.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
So beautiful class. Thank you so much. Perfectly truthful, Shastric, and the passage is about how the gopis, they made this step. They went to Krishna, the elderly ladies, and then they couldn't go back. It reminds us of the it's a poor analogy in one sense, the conquistador coming to South America with his boats, his ships, and his men, and they got off the boat and tried to establish a beachhead and conquer the land there. But the native people came and drove them back, and everybody went running back to the ships. So he said, you know what? We're going to try again. And when they got off the ships and they went on the beach, he had somebody go and burn all the ships, burn down the boats. Like they say, burn your bridges. So there's no possibility of doing anything but going forward or being driven back into the sea. So in our spiritual life, there's always the possibility of drifting back into the mode of goodness, drifting back into our bad habits. But Srila Prabhupada is telling us there's nothing there for you. Take to this devotional service. Hold on to the lotus feet of the spiritual master. The Dhammakana Maharaj just recently left his body, and his last talk, he was telling his disciples, this is very precious. Be tenacious and stay in the association of devotees and keep up your sadhana, keep up your practice and devote yourself. Like these girls, they devoted themselves completely to Krishna with no other consideration or no other desire. That wholeheartedness is so attractive. So anyway, that's just reflecting what it said in the verse and what you spoke about. Maybe Gorsharan Prabhu has some nectar for you.
Thank you so much, bro. Thank you so much for an amazing class. Like, I really take away most of those points were like amazing, and especially I loved how you were saying how we can learn to see Krishna in every situation in the world. All the examples you gave were like so inspiring for me to apply in my life. And also how you said like acting in a way that Krishna is satisfied. So that was also such a great point. And yeah, means basically I'm taking that awakening our personal desire to serve Krishna and satisfy Krishna should be the focus of spiritual life. So thank you so much for inspiring these thoughts this morning. Really appreciate your association. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Prabhu. So I just wanted to comment. Thank you, Adi Prabhu, also, because I wanted to mention this. The gopis surrendered, and by that they had a doubt. They were saying, now that we've come to you, everything else in our life will be taken away. So sometimes we have this conception, we have this fear. If I really surrender, then what's going to happen? My family, my old friends, my life. It's a fear, it's the unknown. And we're worried about losing something. This pastime is teaching, you're not going to lose anything. Krishna tells them, don't worry. They're not going to reject you. In fact, they're going to respect you even more. So if we become Krishna conscious, we're not going to lose out. We're not going to miss out. Actually, we'll be better situated. We'll get more in life. And we won't be rejected, but rather one who becomes elevated spiritually, all the world respects because they've developed this equanimity. They're free from envy. So the divine qualities will necessitate that one will live in this world in a much superior fashion than without. So this is another lesson we get here, that we don't need to fear becoming Krishna conscious. We sometimes read about the higher levels and we think, oh my God, this is like so intense. But one will not lose by getting that. One will only be, that will be the greatest gain, both in this world and the next.
Thank you, Acharya Nistha. But there's a question from Andrea in the chat. Andrea, would you like to articulate your question?
Yes, thank you so much, Anand Vihar Prabhu. And thank you so much, Acharya Nistha Das Prabhu, for subbing at the last minute. It was very lovely to hear how Krishna found you all the way in Peru, even though you said you were raised near DC Potomac, which is where the devotees have a great temple. So he went all the way to get you.
I was 15 minutes away from the temple, but it took me, 20 years to find it. It had to be the right moment.
I thought that was amazing. How Krishna will go to all lengths to find his devotees. And the DC temple has Rukmini Walker Prabhu, who is a very dear spiritual teacher of mine. I'm just wondering if you knew her or Anuttama Prabhu. It's just made me think about that. But the question that I actually had in the chat came up when you were speaking of how nowadays in this culture, it seems like women are very focused on decorating their bodies and making themselves beautiful. And I commented that it just seems to be like in general, that consumeristic culture has everybody focusing on that, both male and female kind of bodied souls are very focused on that. And I was wondering, I had heard once that it's okay for us to still decorate our bodies and kind of try to beautify as long as we have Krishna as the focus. So I believe, I don't know if it was Srila Prabhupada or somebody else who was saying like, that the women were trying to like make themselves really like kind of ugly and just like not really focusing on themselves. And he's like, no, I want you to, we want to be beautiful for Krishna. We want to be like the gopis, that they're making themselves beautiful for Krishna. So I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on that and how we can balance that.
Yeah, thank you. Yes. I mean, psychologically, we have the male and the female ego, and they're perverted reflections of the divine, Radha and Krishna. So I've noticed how in the eternal spiritual world, there's a lot of pastimes that focus on the beauty of Srimati Radharani. So I see that reflected in this world to a somewhat similar degree. I think the male ego is certainly there also, and it does manifest in, I feel, a slightly different way, where the man is trying to be cool and he's trying to impress the lady. So in any shape or form, certainly the false ego is there, and men, of course, also trying to to impress others. Most definitely, it goes both ways. In terms of your other statement or your question, it would be helpful if you remind me because I lost the second part.
Is it okay to be beautiful for Krishna?
Thank you. Yes. So yes, this is what we call yukta vairagya, that to try to make ourselves beautiful for our own gratification, this is, we could say, wrong. This is improper. This is a mood of competition with the Supreme. But everything can be utilized in Krishna's service. So when the devotees are dressed themselves very beautiful, they are attracting people to Krishna consciousness. They're attracting people to Krishna ultimately, because if they're devotees, their whole life is dedicated about Krishna and sharing Krishna consciousness, they can utilize that for spreading the Sankirtan movement. And that was what I understood how Prabhupada dealt with the issue, and he encouraged that. So it's a matter of consciousness, it's a matter of motivation. Thank you. I hope that helps.
Yeah, one time in the 70s, the police was cracking down on Harinam or something, or Ratha Yatra, and the lieutenant told his officers, he said, "You spot them, they're glowing. That's how you know that they are Hare Krishnas. They're glowing." So devotees are glowing. That's that spiritual beauty showing through the external bodily features. So that's there also, right? Is that a valid point, that devotees are beautiful by their character? Yeah.
It's nectar, Prabhu. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's darshan time. Let's turn our cameras on if you can. Papi, you're a surrendered soul. Thank you. Okay. Scarlet, yes. See, you're all beautiful for Krishna. William is beautiful for Krishna. Sundar Anandaji is beautiful for Krishna. Where's your tie, Sundar Ananda? For Krishna. Venetia, Bhima Prabhu. Okay. All right.
Now we can feast our eyes on the most beautiful.
Yes. Isabel, stop your car. One eye on the road, one eye on Krishna. Isabel.
Since the audio's not on, can someone else sing the Govinda Aripurusham?
Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami. That's all I know.
Govindam Maripurusham Tamaham Vajami. Govindam Maripurusham Tamaham Vajami. Venum Klanvantam Aravinda Dalayataksham Bharavatam Samasitam Buddhasundarangam Gandharpa Kotikamaniya Shashubha Govinda Shantami Govinda Maripurusha
Swami Govinda Adipurusham Tamaham Swami Govinda
Okay.
Getting dizzy.
Mute. Hare Krishna. Okay, that was it. Beautiful class, Acharya Nistha Prabhu. Thank you very much. Thanks everyone for participating. We can take one final comment for today, one final question. Bhima Prabhu?
Well, I wasn't going to say anything, but I have a person who is in a writing class of mine. I never really exposed that Hare Krishna. This is a literary class, so I'm sort of undercover. But this person happenstanced upon something that reminded her of something I had written. And she said, I saw these Russian Hare Krishnas with the women all in a line. I'm sure we've all seen it. They've got millions of views. They're all dressed in saris and they're dancing in synchronicity. I'm sure everybody, hopefully everybody's seen this. If not, look it up. There would be like maybe 20 women, beautiful.
We lost you, Bhima Prabhu. Come on. See, Bhima Prabhu is in the woods, searching for Krishna. There he is. Bhima Prabhu, we lost you. It's probably, yeah, unmute yourself, unmute. Bhima Prabhu is our local resident poet.
Not much. She said it was one of the most beautiful things. And how could a religion that displays itself, manifests itself like this, and to be as courageous as to dance in the streets, how can it not be a beautiful religion? So that was her statement, without having heard the philosophy or ever been talked to about it. She said the Hare Krishnas that she saw in the streets dancing with the saris, the Matajis dancing. She said that was just so beautiful, and the singing was beautiful and everything like that. So that shows us manifests that it is appropriate for someone to make themselves beautifully and to dance beautifully and to sing beautifully, to attract people to the most beautiful. So that's my story and I'm sticking to it. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Bhima Prabhu. Okay, thanks everybody. That's it. We're going to wrap it up. Be beautiful for Krishna. At least keep your body clean, shower regularly, trim your beard, Bhima Prabhu, for Krishna. And have a wonderful day. Give it to Krishna and come again tomorrow. Hare Krishna. Love you all. Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Acharya Nistha. Great.